There comes a moment in every man's life when words fail him, but the silence between those words speaks louder than he ever could. You've been there, haven't you, looking at her, wanting to connect, to be seen, to be felt, not just as a man, but as her man. And yet, all the clever lines, the smooth conversations, the playful teasing, they somehow fall short, because deep down you sense it. What she craves isn't just talk. What she truly desires is someone who knows how to reach her soul without needing to explain everything. If you've ever sat beside a woman and felt a world of unspoken energy pass between you, but didn't know how to hold onto it, this is for you. If you've ever watched her eyes drift away mid-conversation and wondered if you lost her somewhere between your words, this is for you, because real connection doesn't start with saying the right thing. It starts with feeling the right thing, understanding her intuitively, deeply, emotionally, without needing to announce yourself. This isn't about games, it's about depth, it's about presence, it's about learning the sacred art of getting inside her mind without saying much at all. Let's begin. 1. Your presence speaks louder than your voice. There is something magical about silence. Not the kind that screams with discomfort, but the kind that holds safety, softness, and trust. When a woman is near you, she is not always listening for what you say. More often, she's listening for what she feels when you're close. The energy you bring, the way your body speaks before your mouth does, the calm you offer without demanding attention. It all tells her who you really are. That's why so many men talk and still never truly touch a woman's heart. They're trying to reach her with words when what she really needs is a man who can just be there, fully, without needing to perform. Without trying to impress, just present. Think about the last time you were around someone who made you feel at ease without saying a word. They didn't rush to fill the silence, didn't fidget to escape it. They weren't rehearsing responses in their mind while you spoke. They were just with you, completely. That's the gift most men never realize they can give to a woman. That is the doorway to her mind. Presence is the language of the emotionally intelligent, and she understands it more fluently than anything you could ever say. When a woman is with a man who is truly present, her nervous system calms down. She doesn't know why she feels safe. She just does. It's not because he has all the right words or the most powerful personality. It's because he's grounded, rooted. He's not jumping from thought to thought, distracted by ego, or preoccupied with getting something from her. He's not using her for validation. He's not seeking attention. His presence says, I'm not here to take anything from you. I'm here because I choose to be. That right there creates a field of emotional security. And women thrive in that space. You don't have to be the loudest in the room to capture her mind. In fact, the man who says the least but radiates peace will always stand out. She will notice the way you take up space, not through volume, but through your calm. She will remember the way you made her feel when she was next to you. It's your presence, not your pitch, that lingers in her thoughts. Let's be honest. Most men are afraid of silence. They think if they don't fill it, they'll lose her interest. But a woman doesn't remember how much you said. She remembers the energy behind what you didn't say. She notices when you're fidgeting, nervous, overthinking, or trying too hard. And she also notices when you sit in stillness, grounded, self-assured, not because you're pretending, but because you're genuinely comfortable in your skin. That level of self-possession is magnetic. It draws her in without force. It makes her lean closer without being told. You don't win a woman over by proving your worth with empty noise. You win her mind when she realizes that she can rest in your presence. That she doesn't have to perform or pretend or push. That when she's with you, the world feels quieter, more peaceful, more real, and that doesn't require fancy lines. That doesn't need expensive plans. That just takes one thing, awareness. When you're with her, how present are you really? Are you checking your phone every few seconds? Are you watching the clock? Are you already thinking about the next thing you want to say instead of hearing her? Women can sense it every time. You may be physically next to her, but emotionally absent. And the moment she feels that disconnection, a door inside her starts to close, not out of anger, but out of protection. Because she's learned not to give herself fully to someone who isn't all the way there with her. There's a difference between a man who shows up and a man who arrives. A man who shows up might be there physically, but his mind is racing. He's anxious, performative, always thinking about how she sees him or what he should say next. A man who arrives is steady, he's still, he doesn't just show up. He becomes a space she can feel safe in. That's rare, that's powerful, and that's unforgettable. Sometimes it's in the quietest moments that a woman opens up the most, when there's no pressure, no performance, no expectations, just presence. She'll reveal parts of herself that no one else has seen. She'll trust you with stories she's never told, not because you asked, not because you convinced her, but because your energy made her feel like she finally had somewhere to land. You can't fake presence, and you can't rush it. It's cultivated by slowing down, by breathing, by grounding yourself in the moment and letting go of the urge to impress. When you listen to her, not just to respond, but to understand, you begin to speak the language of her mind. She notices your stillness, your patience, the way you don't interrupt her thoughts or rush her process. That level of restraint shows maturity, and maturity in a chaotic world is intoxicating. Think about it. How many people actually make her feel heard? How many men truly look at her without judgment, without trying to fix her, without trying to win her? Very few. That's why presence is so powerful, because it's rare, because it's real, and because it doesn't demand anything in return. Presence isn't about dominance, it's about devotion to the moment. It's about tuning into what's happening right here, right now. Her breathing, her energy, the mood between you. It's about being so attuned to the moment that your eyes alone say, "You have my full attention." And when a woman feels that, when she feels that you are all in, she opens, not just emotionally, mentally, spiritually. She allows you into the spaces she guards the most. You become unforgettable not by being the loudest voice in her world, but by being the quietest place her soul can rest. And that begins with presence. Sometimes a man doesn't know the power he carries when he's simply calm. He thinks he has to fix her problems, offer big solutions, or swoop in like a hero. But many times, she doesn't need saving. She just needs someone who can hold space for her storm. Someone who can sit in the fire with her without flinching. That kind of presence heals more than advice ever could. In your silence, there can be strength. In your stillness, there can be safety. In your eyes, there can be understanding. And all of that speaks directly into her mind without a single word spoken. She's not waiting for poetry. She's waiting for peace. So the next time you sit across from her, breathe, slow down, let your shoulders drop, put your phone away, look at her, not with intensity, not with pressure, but with curiosity, with kindness, with a gentle steadiness that says, "You're not alone here." And then, say less, listen more, watch how she leans in, not because you chased her, but because you anchored her. Watch how her body softens, how her guard lowers, how her smile lingers longer. That is what presence does. That is what speaks louder than your voice ever will. She may never be able to explain why she trusts you, why she thinks about you, why you stand out, but deep down she knows. It's because when you were with her, she felt seen. Not because of your charm, not because of your lines, but because of your presence. And once a woman feels safe in your presence, you no longer have to fight to get into her mind. You're already there. 2. Observation unlocks intimacy without words. You don't have to ask a woman 100 questions to understand what's going on in her mind. You don't have to beg her to open up. If you learn how to observe genuinely and patiently, you will begin to see the version of her that few people ever earn the right to know, because every woman has a language that exists beyond her words. It's in her sighs, her silences, her posture, her habits, her reactions, her rhythm. And the man who can slow down long enough to notice those details without judgment is the man who will live inside her mind long after he's gone quiet. A woman is like a melody most men rush past trying to play their own tune, but when you actually listen, not just to her words but to her behavior, you begin to hear the music she doesn't even realize she's playing. You start to understand when she's overthinking by the way she adjusts her necklace. You begin to recognize when she's trying to avoid conflict by changing the subject. You notice that her "I'm okay" isn't really okay, and that when she laughs a little too quickly, she's using humor to cover the ache. These aren't things she'll announce. These are things you catch when you care enough to watch her with your heart, not just your eyes. Most people hear with their ears, but a woman remembers the ones who listen with their attention. It's not about being hyper-analytical or treating her like a puzzle. It's about respect. It's about slowing down enough to let her show you, in her own way, what she feels, what she hides, what she wishes someone would just get without her having to explain it again. She wants to be recognized, not just for her beauty or the sound of her voice, but for the depth beneath it. She wants to feel that you see through her mask, that you notice when she's not herself, and that you don't call her out to embarrass her, but to gently remind her, "You don't have to pretend with me." The man who can pick up on the subtle shift in her tone when she's disappointed but doesn't want to make a scene. The one who senses when she's exhausted but pushing through because she doesn't want to appear weak. That's the man she won't forget. Because while everyone else sees the version she presents, he sees the woman she protects. And that kind of perception creates a deep emotional intimacy that no grand romantic gesture could ever replace. There is so much she's trying to say, even when she's quiet, so many cues in her eyes, her breathing, her reactions, the way she pulls her sleeve down over her wrist when she's nervous, the way she tucks her hair behind her ear when she's unsure, the way she holds eye contact when she's passionate and breaks it when she's vulnerable. It's all communication, and when you learn to read her cues, you begin to dance with her emotionally in a rhythm that feels effortless to her. She won't even know how to describe it, but she'll feel understood. She'll feel seen, and that's what most women are dying for in silence, because the truth is, most of her life she's had to explain herself. She's had to defend her emotions, justify her reactions, be told she's too much or too sensitive. She's learned to keep parts of herself hidden to survive. So when she finds someone who doesn't ask her to translate everything, who notices the storm behind her smile and simply holds space for it without trying to fix it, that feels like home to her. And that kind of connection doesn't require fireworks. It requires awareness, it requires stillness, it requires you to watch her with your soul wide open. Real observation isn't about stalking every detail, it's about valuing the unspoken. When she wears her hair differently and you notice, she feels special. When she's unusually quiet and you gently check in without pressure, she feels loved. When you remember the story she told you in passing 3 weeks ago and bring it up without prompt, she feels safe. Why? Because she realizes she's not invisible to you. In a world where she often feels unseen, unheard, and misunderstood, your quiet attentiveness becomes a sanctuary. It's easy to be distracted, easy to overlook her little shifts in energy. But the man who masters the art of observation becomes her emotional mirror. He reflects not just what she says, but what she means. He notices when her boundaries are being tested, when she's reaching her limit, when she needs encouragement but doesn't know how to ask for it. He doesn't require a spotlight to act. He doesn't wait for applause. He just sees and responds with care, and that's what makes him unforgettable. This doesn't mean assuming things or jumping to conclusions. It means listening beyond the surface. It means asking questions like, "I noticed you got really quiet. Are you okay?" instead of, "Why are you acting weird?" It means responding with empathy instead of frustration. Because if you become frustrated every time she goes inward, you'll teach her that her silence isn't safe. But if you become curious when she retreats, you'll teach her that you're willing to understand her even when she's hard to read. And that will mean everything to her. Women are constantly scanning for safety, emotional, physical, spiritual. The man who proves through small, consistent acts that he notices her, hears her, remembers what matters to her, and gently shows up in the moments when she doesn't think anyone will. He's not just in her heart. He's in her mind, and more importantly, he's in her trust. Sometimes the things you notice don't need to be spoken out loud. Sometimes you see her pain and simply sit a little closer. Sometimes you see her joy and mirror it back without taking the spotlight. Sometimes you recognize she needs space, not because she told you, but because you sensed it, and you give it not out of distance, but out of love. That kind of quiet awareness tells her more than 1,000 I love yous ever could. You don't have to solve her, you don't have to predict her, you just have to see her, genuinely, honestly, with reverence for who she is, not who you want her to be. When you meet her there, when your attention sharpens not to control her but to care for her, something shifts in her mind. She lets you in, not because you pushed, but because you patiently earned your way in by noticing the pieces of her that others overlook. She may be the strongest woman in the room, the loudest laugh, the brightest smile. But you'll be the one who notices when she doesn't want to carry the weight anymore. You'll see the tiny break in her armor, and instead of pointing it out, you'll quietly hold it with her. And that will be the moment she remembers for the rest of her life. That will be the moment she begins to trust you with her mind, not just her body or her time. When you lead with observation, you don't have to demand access, you earn it. You don't ask her to lay herself bare for the sake of convenience. You show her, day by day, that you're watching, that you're listening, that you're learning, and eventually she will open the doors on her own. Intimacy without words is possible, but only when your awareness is gentle, intentional, and full of respect. You don't need the perfect words. You just need to be the man who sees what others don't and loves her even more because of it. That's when you're inside her mind, not as a passing thought, but as a steady presence. Not as someone she had to explain herself to, but as someone who chose to understand without being told, and that is intimacy in its purest form. 3. Emotional timing creates silent impact. There are moments in a woman's life when she won't say what she's truly feeling. Moments where words won't come, or when she doesn't want to burden anyone with what's swirling in her heart. You may be standing right next to her, hearing her speak, even watching her smile. But if you're not emotionally attuned, you'll miss what matters most. Because what she needs isn't always what she'll say. And the man who learns how to sense the right moment, who knows when to lean in, when to pull back, when to hold space without asking questions, when to show up without fanfare, that man will leave an impact that lingers far beyond physical presence. Emotional timing isn't about doing everything right. It's about feeling everything deeply, in real time, and letting your instincts respond to her energy instead of your ego. It's about noticing the tremble in her voice before she breaks. It's about hearing the pause after she says, "I'm fine," and recognizing that now is not the time to walk away. It's about standing still when she shuts down, not to pressure her, but to silently say, "I'm not going anywhere." A man who understands emotional timing doesn't just react, he reads. He feels, he knows, not because he was told, but because he's connected, deeply. Every woman carries storms she won't announce. There are times she wants to fall apart, but she's too tired to explain why. Times when she's holding back tears during dinner, keeping it together for the sake of others. Times when the world has been too loud, too cruel, too dismissive, and the last thing she wants is more noise. In those moments, a man who doesn't rush to speak, but chooses to be still with her, becomes a balm to her spirit. You don't need to fix her, you just need to feel her, and that kind of presence requires emotional timing. Imagine this, she comes home after a long day, her voice is low, her energy distant. She says nothing's wrong, but you know better. You don't ask a dozen questions, you don't make jokes to cheer her up. You sit with her, you pull her gently into your chest, you breathe slowly so she starts to match your rhythm, you kiss her forehead, not to get closer, but to offer peace. That's what emotional timing looks like. It's subtle, it's soft, it doesn't draw attention to itself, but it changes everything for her. Sometimes the most powerful things are done in silence. A hand on her back when she's overwhelmed. A blanket wrapped around her when she didn't realize she was cold. A glass of water placed next to her bed because you saw the fatigue in her eyes. She may not say anything in the moment. She may pretend not to notice, but deep down, she feels it. She remembers it. And your timing, your ability to show up with exactly what she didn't know she needed, stays with her longer than any romantic speech ever could. Emotional timing also means knowing when not to speak. There are moments when she's ranting not because she wants answers, but because she needs to be heard. Moments when she cries not to be comforted, but to release something she's held in too long. If you interrupt her pain with solutions, you'll miss the point. But if you hold space without trying to change her emotions, if you just let her feel without interference, she'll begin to trust you in ways she's never trusted anyone, because you're showing her that her feelings are safe with you. That's what every woman wants, emotional safety. She wants to know that her silence won't push you away, that her tears won't scare you off, that her anger, her sadness, her confusion won't make you walk. And emotional timing is what proves that to her. It tells her, without words, you don't have to be perfect for me to stay. You meet her where she is. You wait with her when she's stuck. You walk beside her without rushing her process. And all of that is felt deeply, because it's done with the kind of timing that isn't learned from books, but felt from the soul. You don't need a script. You need sensitivity. You need to be the man who pays attention not just to what she says, but to when she says nothing at all. To the moment she closes a door a little harder than usual. To the time she stays quiet during a conversation she usually dominates. To the shift in her gaze, the change in her breathing, the slight delay before she answers. These are cues, these are openings, and when you respond with care, with patience, with intention, when you move in rhythm with her emotional world, you create a bond that doesn't need constant maintenance. It simply exists, it grows, it deepens. Sometimes she's waiting for you to feel her before she says a word. Sometimes she tests the waters by pulling back to see if you'll lean in. Sometimes she'll let her guard down just a little to see if your timing matches her need. And when it does, when you don't miss the moment, when you show up not for drama or reward, but because you care, that's when she knows. That's when she lets you in, not just into her life, into her mind, into her emotional landscape, into the places she usually hides. Timing isn't about being perfect. You will miss cues, you'll get it wrong sometimes. But if your heart is in the right place and you're present enough to learn, she'll feel that too. She doesn't expect you to be psychic, but she does hope you'll try. She hopes you'll care enough to notice. She hopes that one day she won't have to beg to be seen or heard, that someone will just feel her and meet her there. And here's what you may not realize. When you show up with the right emotional timing, you begin to shape how she sees herself. Your silence during her chaos teaches her she's not too much. Your patience in her withdrawal tells her she's not a burden. Your warmth during her insecurity tells her she's still worthy. You become a mirror of compassion, and when she sees herself through your timing, she softens, she heals, she trusts, she opens. That is why emotional timing matters. Because when a woman sees that you're with her in every shade of her emotion, not just the sunshine, she connects with you on a level that no physical intimacy can replicate. She feels known, she feels chosen. She feels held, and when she feels that, when she feels you showing up in the exact moment she needs it most, without her having to ask you become